to divide the room by precincts? Or can it just be like, because the poll pads, the precinct comes up,
Right.
and
In the primaries, you would have to, because there's 2 state rep districts. So there's 2 different sets of ballots. So at very least, you'd have to do that. Whereas for the early voting, no, there is just, 2 poll pads for anyone who comes in.
Okay.
So it's possible. But you would have to have a whole string of poll pads anyway, because, you wouldn't want people waiting. Actually, we were surprised that in our precinct anyway, there were more people who walked in and voted than the combination of mail-in and early voting.
But, John, yours was very busy most of the night, your precinct.
It got busier during the...
Yeah, compared to like ours. So maybe you're right.
The last 3 hours, so
yeah.
Whatever. Okay, so I am going to start the meeting. Call the meeting to order. Since we definitely have a quorum. And we'll take attendance. So Nora Bucko.
Present.
Mark Doxer.
Here.
John Sasso.
Present.
Ron Assini.
Present.
And John Parsons? No. Michael Coltman. Saw Michael yesterday at the elections. Okay. And so we'll begin to entertain a motion to accept the minutes of the August 10th meeting.
Actually have a comment on it, John.
Sure. But a comment about the minutes, because we usually have to.
Okay, you can take a motion and open for discussion. Sure. I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of August 2022.
Okay. Do I have a second? I see Ron seconding it. So now we're open for discussion.
All right. There's a correction on, sorry. I went to the wrong page here. 1 second. It's a comment about the second RFP. And sorry, let me just get to the right document. Sorry, I closed it. I'm going to have to reopen it. All right, on page 2, where it says Walgreen Building Possibilities, line 1, 2, 3, 4. The select board issued another RFP for potential purchase of space in the downtown.
Was that the correction in the yes?
Yeah, and actually the response date. Oh, I think that's right. Why do I think it's the 19th? I need to check that.
It is.
There is a meeting with the architect on the 19th.
Oh, that's what it is. So I think then I should check the date before we confirm. How about we put in there just to confirm the closure date of the RFP, just so that it's accurate.
Okay. Any other additions, corrections, deletions? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion now to accept the minutes as amended.
So moved.
And I have a second.
Second.
Okay, so we'll take the roll call. Nora Bucko.
Present.
Okay. Mark Doxer.
Yes.
John Sasso.
Yes.
Ron Assini.
Yes.
John O'Neill, yes. And is either Mike or John Parsons on board yet? Okay, so we'll move on. Okay, I had put here before I'd seen how fast that subcommittee had worked. the priorities. I mean, I thought that was great, actually. People really should be commended who are on the subcommittee. So I guess we'll open it up for a more general discussion then for the working group update. Is somebody who's going to represent the work group this evening? So kind of like walk us through what we have.
There's Michael.
Okay.
Michael joined us as well too.
Oh, Michael is here as well now.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I can start if that's helpful.
Yeah, I think it would be.
Sure.
Okay, great. So the subgroup did meet a few times. After the first conversation, we had discussed possibly getting a couple folks from the Council on Aging also involved in the preliminary conversation, just because we all want to be on the same page. I think we have the same goals as to what we want to see for the seniors, and just finding the best solution for the seniors and looking at this space and seeing if it is a possibility. So there were members of the COA that went and took a little visit at Walgreens. The PSC staff was out there a couple of times on different occasions touring the Walgreens. This subgroup looked over all of the preliminary floor plans that the architect had laid out for us, and we have edited it accordingly. Ron also put together a great preliminary baseline floor plan that he shared with us in one of the meetings. So basically, we're just getting as many people as we can involved in the conversation so we can all be on the same page and go over if this space is going to be adequate enough for what our seniors need. And I don't know if anyone else wants to chime in on what they saw at the center and their general overall thoughts. I personally think the space is great, and the staff is supportive of the space currently. However, I don't want to speak out of turn for anyone who is not here. So anyone who did tour and has an opinion on the subgroup, I encourage you to chime in.
I'm just curious, when I first saw the floor plan for what it was now, I didn't see where the bathrooms were. Was I missing it, or were they only on the second floor?
There are
I
bathrooms.
noticed in the plans that you submitted, they clearly were on both.
Yes. Yep. So the most current plan, I think that was in the packet, does show bathrooms on the first and second floor.
No, I mean currently with the way the property is today.
Oh,
are
there just on the second floor right now?
Okay, that's what I thought from the plans, but I thought maybe I was missing something. Okay, great.
Yes.
So John, I can bring up kind of what I shared with the team.
Okay.
This is the first floor. There's plumbing here. That's where the bathrooms would go on the first floor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
Or could go.
Besides, bathrooms are already existing on the second floor. Potentially. Potentially. Yeah.
And the architect preliminary drawings or something that I saw had bathrooms in a different place, but that's
okay. Yeah, I mean, he's an architect. I mean, this is what there's a potential.
Right.
Yeah.
I just tried to throw that out. That was.
Yep.
Actually, they were in the same place.
Were they? Yeah.
Yeah.
Other things were moved around.
Yeah, a few things were moved around, but actually the general overall layout that Ron put together is generally
right.
the same idea. And I don't know if everyone saw that in the packet, and we can share that on the screen too as well.
Yeah, if you want to share that, that'll help, I think.
Yeah. That Ron's drawing is different than what the architect proposed.
Yeah.
So is that a newer version? of, or are we using the architect's drawing or Ron's drawing? How does that?
I think what we did was, and I believe that the architect did see that preliminary drawing, and then we also made some spreadsheets. The one that I made was with folks from the Pleasant Street Center staff, where we went over the spaces that we would need and the amount of space we would need for them. I'm just trying to get back to my screen here to share it. And then Michael Coltman also sent along a
Plan for a pickleball.
spreadsheet. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
The timeline, Nancy, I think sort of a sketch came first, and then we tried to augment it with some of these spreadsheets of actual space that, you know, what spaces needed to be created and how big were they required. And then the architect preliminary, right, Jenna?
yes, and I'm
sharing now. I think. Can you see
Yeah.
mine?
Yeah,
Yeah. The bathrooms are in the same place. Sorry.
yeah. That's the one that I've seen.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. I'm having some technical difficulties over here. Yes, so that's the most updated version that the architect came up with that I had sent along in the packet.
That's nice.
And since then, the PSC staff and myself have sent a little bit different of a version, but the overall layout, again, is great for the staff. So
Where's the office space on the first floor?
Second floor, right?
currently, it's just on the second floor. In chatting with the staff, we agreed that there should be offices on the first floor. So in our plan, we have some offices upstairs now and some offices downstairs.
Okay.
And Jenna, one thought I had after thinking about this while I was on vacation working hard, is the offices on the second floor need to have windows, I think. I don't know whether that's possible. They're not
Yes.
there now.
Yep, there was a lot of conversation on how we get some direct sunlight in there.
Yeah.
If windows can't be popped up on that side, you'll see on the left-hand side where it says storage.
Yeah.
That window on the outside is actually the vestibule window. So we don't know whether or not we could kind of push into that area and open up that window to light that space.
Yep.
And that'll give us capability to move the offices over there, or perhaps put a fitness studio out there with tons of light shedding in, and then we could have windows on the other side of the fitness studio to shed light into the hallway and into the offices. So there's definitely some creative solutions, it seems like, for sunlight, and that was one of the biggest needs for folks who are walking through, it seemed like, in my conversations with folks, is the
How
sunlight.
much office space is now being proposed for the first floor? I'm just mindful of
Yep, so
whatever office space is on the first floor is taken away from activity space, which going up, you just can't move activity space, up
right.
to the floor.
So what we were hoping to propose, because we think that exercise room is far too small right now, and we needed some extra storage, we thought, on the first floor. So what we proposed, and again, everything's super flexible, this is just the staff and I like rummaging through it, is that exercise room now becomes more storage. That exercise room and the billiards room move upstairs. We create a couple offices where that conference room is, and then a couple additional offices in the billiards room. So that storage area right there would become a large exercise room, and and a billiards room. And that AD and director and social services, the AD and director would be moved downstairs. Social services would move to that smaller conference area over to the right-hand side. We could still keep that for admin and conference and kind of kick into that room and just redo the layout a little bit more. So we think that it's important for staff to be on the first floor, but also thought that the nurse and the social worker could have a little bit more privacy upstairs. But the total number of offices would be 6, not including the admin area, which could be cubicles for administrative secretaries or whoever is there, program coordinator, senior center coordinator, or you could make that into individual offices as well.
Can I add a few comments?
Sure.
The Council on Aging, the members that participated in the walkthrough had a number of comments. We did put together a document that identifies those comments, and also we did not propose actual space, but we proposed square footage for different activities. So our first glance at this says that there's not enough square footage for some of the activities or some of the rooms that are laid out on this particular plan. And light was a real concern. The columns on the first floor were a real concern. The those dividers are a real concern. So there were a number of issues that came up from the Council on Aging members that attended the walkthrough.
How many?
We are going to be.
First of all, no, how many attended the walkthrough?
I don't have the list in front of me, but I think it was like 12 or 13, or maybe it was closer to 13, 14. It was almost all of the Council on Aging members.
Yeah, almost everyone, yeah.
Almost everyone.
Between the two tours, not all in one. There were enough in the first tour that we had to break into 2 groups to avoid the quorum appearance. And the second one had, I think there were 4 of us on the second one. I guess I count twice because I went to both. So, but,
I think the only one that wasn't there was Sally Hoyt, and that's understandable.
yeah, and she wrote a letter about it. So,
John,
Yes, she did.
I think you have a number of hands that are raised.
Yes, John Sasso. And then Mark.
All right, thanks, John. So I have a couple of questions. I want to rewind a bit, just back to Michael and Mark. With respect to the input that you got originally, did you get everything you think you needed in terms of all of the details for specific programmatic and space and facility needs? Do you think that was an adequate assessment of everything that you needed, or were there things that were missing or still maybe missing?
So I'll answer that. From my list, it's not a complete match. There's, if you create a wish list, it has all sorts of things on it, and this does not complete.
Right. I'm sorry. Let me. So that's my second question.
Okay.
The first question is just that last meeting we asked everybody on the call to provide input to you guys on what it was that would help you, and I just want to understand. Did you get that input? That's my first question. Do you feel you got the adequate input that you needed to get everything? I just would like to get that question answered first.
I was on vacation, so
I thought that we were supposed to get some sort of structured way of providing input, and I was waiting for that.
We did. We sent out a spreadsheet. We filled it in.
I didn't.
I know I provided input.
didn't see
When
it.
after that, I can't answer that, but I'm just,
Yeah,
that's
I
why I'm
never saw
asking.
it.
That's why I'm asking. Did you guys all get the input? Did you all get the approach to do this? Because I'm sorry if I'm coming across a little bit berated here. I just want to know that this work that we're doing is getting done and getting incorporated. That's the first question. So did everybody have an opportunity to provide input, and did the team feel that they got all the input they needed? That's the first question I'd like to get answered.
From my perspective, I think we got a lot of information. And we do have a spreadsheet that Nancy put together. We have a spreadsheet that was provided by the staff. We have a spreadsheet that was provided by Michael Coltman. We have a layout that was provided by Ron. We had 3 meetings, but not everyone could attend every meeting. The last meeting, it was just staff and Nancy. So the next step is that the architect is going to revisit the plan and meet with us in person on next Monday.
Okay, Mark.
Yeah, if I could, maybe this will help. I think probably folks have seen this, but if you didn't, I think it's really helpful.
Right.
So
this was sent out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is the second question I was going to ask, is did we make an assessment of, based on that input, it looks like this gives us an idea of the deltas, what's missing and what may be required, if at all.
I know that from our perspective, that list from the COA space program is not the list, is not the exact list that we generated. So I have a feeling what the architect did was he kind of grouped like categories together to
But Nancy,
put
I just
spaces in.
going to pause right now because
Yeah.
Mark's been waiting to speak.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So if I could just kind of go through it. So, and I was absent for most of this process. So I apologize, but I got myself, I think, up to speed reasonably well. And I think Jen has done a great job kind of explaining where we are, what's going on. This was an attempt to bring together a number of the different inputs. And you can see that some of them relate to the amount of space. Some of them relate to the number of people. And then an attempt was made to kind of compare that to the latest sketch. And the reason why this is important is we need to, at this point, at least get a rough cost estimate in terms of what's going on, for the level of activity, the kinds of things that we're looking for at this point. What are the costs that are going to be involved? So we have to kind of come to at least a starting point. And then there'll be pluses, minuses, et cetera. And the next meeting that's coming up, which is, I believe, is it the 19th, Jenna? Do I have that one right?
Yes.
It is more of an open forum to kind of look at things. But again, I think part of this is understanding, what are, I'm going to call them ballpark, although it's much better than that. But to meet the needs that the different groups are talking about, what sort of level of construction is going to be required to get that done? And obviously, what are the costs that are associated with that? There is going to be some potential need to move things. For example, this can't go out into, can we do it in November of 2023? The answer is no. Things are going to happen a lot faster than that. On the other hand, they don't need to happen tomorrow. So, there's some urgency to things, but not, there isn't a fire yet. That said, late this year, I think if there are responses to the RFP that are interesting to the town, we're going to need to figure out kind of how to make a commitment to it and what it would look like. And then I think there's one more step that conceivably takes place that I think will be important for everybody. And that's comparing this idea of using this building to a few other alternatives. And the alternatives won't be fully scoped out. That's the purpose possibly of the $300,000 that the select board allocated to work here. But I think people need to be able to look at what are the kind of quantum differences in cost between renovating an existing building, maybe this one, maybe the existing senior center, the Pleasant Street Center, and thinking about kind of new construction and what that would involve. And to kind of understand the quantum differences in cost. And that may guide our discussion. That may come back and say, well, we should move more in one direction, because I think there's room to figure out what the needs are and find out, what that looks like. To Michael, to your point, it will be, we won't be able to get everything that we'd like, but I think we need to make sure that we're achieving the needs. We're doing a big improvement that's going to be much more enjoyable, accessible for the community. And I think that's all here. We will have the benefit, I hope, of some of the responses from the survey to kind of add a little bit more color to the discussion. Certainly those that come in automated, that come in over the web. And I think we'll to your question, John Sasso, in terms of are our inputs being considered as recalc? I hope so, but everybody needs to answer that. COA, others, community, and then to figure out do we have enough information to make a decision? As it relates to this building, there will be some time constraints. As it relates to other buildings, maybe it's less. That's a discussion to have. And let me stop with that.
Okay. John, John Sasso, was that responsive to your?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you guys did more than I thought we were going to have at this point, to be honest with you. So, definitely kudos to the team for doing that. I think that last sheet you showed is kind of what I was looking to understand about, is where are you with that? And it sounds like there's still some more trade-offs that might need to be made. And I certainly think, as Jenna said, getting their staff to look through this and make those kind of trade-offs, and at least at a first levels, they're the ones that are going to have to be kind of living it, so to speak. So I think that's a great idea. But certainly I would say, if there are other discrepancies that are out there, even if they can't all be met, I think we just should at least identify them so that people understand, okay, yes, we heard you. We know that you'd like this to be bigger, or we know you'd like you to have this dedicated space, but given the constraints, it's fallen off the bottom, or it's on a lower priority, or we've decided that it's going to be incorporated in this space as part of programmatic. So I think, that's really what would be really helpful. It was tough to tell from that spreadsheet. And again, I didn't spend a lot of time looking at it. But I think it would be, almost like color coded. Okay, these are green, these are yellow, these are red, something to basically highlight to people, what we feel we've addressed versus what might still be open versus what's definitely off the table. And I think that would be a really good tool to communicate to folks. So that's it. Okay. Thank you.
Before I saw the plans, and once again, I think the committee's done a great job. I never expected to have this much. I just wanted to, two things. One is that this is one place. We don't even know, if this is going to be a possibility, though I saw in the new paper that Fidel felt hopeful that there'd be something coming. So I don't know if there's any, inside knowledge there or whatever, but the RFP is still outstanding. So we'll have to wait on that. The other is, and this is to your point, John, rather than get into, do we need more space for this as opposed to that? Are there major areas that people feel like, oh, this isn't here at all, and not to get, talk about this plan that way, but this is great because it highlights, the exercise room, the quiet space, the library, a large place for, exercise, craft. So I thought that was great too, because it can stimulate, some concrete thought of, all right, geez, this is great, but I thought, I would like to, or this is something that I think maybe should, if it isn't a priority now, maybe should be moved up. Mindful of what has already been said, we can't do everything. No matter what space we have, we're not going to be able to do everything that people would like, and that would be good. It's not like anything people come up with, we're saying, oh, that's not, we don't need that. It's a matter of knowing there's going to be limitations. I'm going to go to Michael, and then I'll go to Marilyn. Okay. Michael, you have your hand up.
I just put mine up. There was a significant concern from my perspective anyway, about parking, and I just wanted to bring that up. That when you look at the site, it's really hard to understand how we're going to have adequate parking and adequate traffic flow for seniors and buses, bus transfers and things like that. I think the architect drawing had some ideas along that line. I haven't really digested what those are just yet, but that's a concern that we're going to have to address, because in every conversation I've ever had about any of this access, parking kind of access is always brought up.
Okay, Marilyn?
Hi. Oh, I'm not muted. Yay. Thank you. A few concerns. One, just a point for accuracy. The Council on Aging has not met since we've had the opportunity to see the building, and we were all really diligent about not discussing our feelings, responses, thoughts while we were there, so that we would not violate the open meeting law. And our next meeting is next week, so please don't take anything you're seeing as the COA opinion on this building. There is no formed COA opinion based on the information we've got. What we did was share some information that largely came from, just as you've been doing in discussions, from what we've seen other towns do. It just was sort of some common sense basic specs is my take on what that exercise was about, a starting point, but it was not a COA endorsed. We've thought it all through, and this is the square footage we need for these things. So please don't jump the gate on that one. I'm hoping we will have input on that soon, but we're not there yet. Parking is a big concern of mine. I think it's really critical that we get an expert on accessibility and both really, and inclusivity involved in this discussion. I look at those lovely diagrams and I think, oh wow, what a wonderful world it will be. But all you have to do is look at how close the swinging doors are to the tables and the chairs. No wheelchair is going to easily roll through there. It doesn't mean it's way off, but I know I don't have the knowledge, except for just eyeballing it, to know where the problems are, but it's a problem in our current center. It is not inclusive for people who need to use mobility assistive devices. Someone who's in a wheelchair really can't navigate in there unless someone's pushing them, and that doubles the amount of space you need. But for someone to come in a wheelchair independently and comfortably and easily navigate their way around is a real problem in the current center. I want to make sure we don't repeat the problem in the second in our eagerness to see how many tables and chairs and everything else and billiard tables we could fit in. But I think we'll find you need more space than you think for some of those things. What else? If we do, it's sort of the if you build it, they will come. And sort of last year's long discussion was, we only have about 1,000 people who currently are even on the mailing list of the Pleasant Street Center. We finally pushed past that with that postcard and got it out to all 7,000 elderly people in the community, as well as everybody else in the community last year. But we know there are many thousands more than who are currently signed up with the Pleasant Street Center. Personally, and there's no way to know this because we haven't done a study of this, but I suspect that the lack of inclusivity is an issue that reduces the number who might come. If it were truly an easy place for someone in a wheelchair to get out of their car by themselves, get in their wheelchair, roll around, I think we might see a wheelchair there once in a while. I'm sure we'd see more walkers. I know I've been to other centers and you'll see a whole wall in the entryway where people have put their walkers while they're in playing bridge or whatever. If we do end up getting more people because we built better space, we're likely to need more people to help run the programs. It might be volunteers. I mean, I'm not proposing necessarily we've got to double the staff, but I know Jenna's been working really hard with Amy to develop a cadre of volunteers. They're going to need a space somewhere else. So I think planning office space that's largely driven by serving the little group of 1,000 is underestimating what we're likely to need. And if we build it again, I think they will come. I hope they will come. So I would suggest that we rethink that office space a little bit. And then just a point of, I'm just not sure what the and I know there's no decision, or I gather there's no decision on this, but I'm not clear what the prevailing drift of thought is here. Are we thinking that this is our forever home and we're pretty much letting Recalc go its merry way? Or are we thinking this is just a temporary, maybe 5 years, and then we'll move on to our new home that might also have, you know, recreational things for the community as a whole? Because to do it right, to get things like soundproofing barriers between the rooms that are absolutely top of the scale investments, because hearing is a really big issue with this audience. You can't have things that just block the view. You need top of the market kinds of materials to do that. You need the floor to be cushioned, because this is a group that a good proportion has arthritis. To be walking on something that's a hard floor is not inclusive. It's painful. Again, if we're thinking about this really being a place that's inclusive for the elderly, it's going to cost a lot. And does that make sense if this is only a short-term solution? And does that cut us off from the opportunity to get it right for a long-term solution? And I haven't been to a number of the meetings. So one, I couldn't come to the last Recalc, and a bunch of the subcommittee meetings were when I was working. So I know I'm not up to date on everything, but just listening tonight, it's not clear to me what we're thinking. But I think the answers to those questions will greatly affect what does and doesn't make sense.
Can I just jump in for a sec, Marilyn? So we have not been presented with any 5-year solution related to this space. And the current RFP doesn't offer any 5-year solutions on any space. So that's not what's being considered here at all. This is a long-term decision. The lease minimum term is 10 years.
Okay.
And obviously, if there were a purchase option, that wouldn't be for a 5-year horizon either. So this is, I would say, being thought of, either this space or others that might come through on the RFP as longer term.
Okay, that helps a lot, but that raises my concern about getting it right. You know, things like making do without enough windows for a few years. Okay, but windows are really important. People, as their eyesight fades, they can see better in sunlight. It's just a fact of aging eyes. Sunlight really matters. You know, just lots of things like that. We need to be looking at really high-end answers. And I don't know that we can do it in that building. My personal preference is just rip it down and build it right, which wouldn't bother me at all. I think it's, in theory, a great location. And you could put it potentially on a smaller footprint, but taller, but then make parking spaces next to it, because we don't have enough parking, I think, right there. So I'm just concerned that I think these things need to be laid out in a grid of, okay, in 10 years, what would the best solution look like within our means? And are we really talking about creating that, or are we talking about making do just to get more square footage? Because square footage, if it's not appealing, isn't going to work. This is about bringing people together so they won't be isolated, and creating a sense of community. And, you know, think about it when you choose a restaurant. Do you go to the dark, gloomy one that you don't like and the tables are crowded? Or do you go to the nice, pretty one that's, you know, got space where you enjoy being in the environment? I think those are important considerations in a senior center. And I would like to see an architect involved who has specialized in creating senior centers, not just building parts of them, but genuinely specializing with an eye to what it takes to make a welcoming, inclusive environment for elderly people. I think it would have an impact. Jane, I know, had been talking with an architect, or she'd been to a presentation. John Parsons, I know you had the deck from it. He was showing sort of ideal things, but just to get the mindset so people could envision what an ideal situation would be, which is not to say we're going to have ideal, of course we won't, but at least to get us seeing what the end of the road that we're working towards might look like. Because frankly, in the building that's there, I mean, ask yourselves, would you ever consider putting children in there and calling it a school with the shell that it's got and with the limited windows and all the rest of it. And I think the elderly deserve at least as welcoming a spot. So I'm just concerned. Just square footage is important, but it's not the answer by itself. So I'll get off my bandwagon.
So if I could just add for 1 sec, sorry. I think that back to John Sasso's point and John O'Neill's also, thinking about where the concerns are, I think is the most productive way to kind of continue the discussion and to give feedback into the system. And, you know, I've noted a lot of the comments. It'll be great. I assume that Marilyn, in the COA meeting, this will be an agenda item, is to kind of pull things together. So that's the goal. The 19th is a great opportunity to kind of share more. The architect that's doing this now is involved in this, let's call it this phase. Eventually there would be we'd have to do schematic plans and all sorts of things if we were to move forward, which would be a competitive process. But one of the things, I agree with you, one of the things is we need somebody that understands senior centers, not someone that is building warehouse space, for example, something like that. So I think these are the right inputs to bring, you know, in and think about it. And, you know, so parking come up. There is a lot going on in looking at reconfiguring parking and thinking about all sorts of different options, which is happening because people have said parking is really important. So I think this is the right kind of process. I just would encourage making it as productive as possible and as needs focused as possible. So in other words, rather than saying we need 10,000 square feet to do X, it would be better to say, you know, there are going to be a lot of events that could have 100, 150 people. We need to make sure that it can take care of that. There'll be activities where we need smaller spaces. Sound is going to be an issue, things like that. I think that that's great input, and that'll help in estimating some of the costs that are involved. I guess one thing to be aware of is that to build inside of a shell as compared to building a shell is probably 1/2 the cost. That's a little too broad, but it's not that far off.
Now, I'm not suggesting that it wouldn't cost more. I'm just saying if we're going to spend as much as half, let's get something that is what we truly would like to have. And my concern is that, I mean, we're working with what was designed to be a retail space that didn't have easy access from the outside. It was a pharmacy. They didn't want people to be able to go through windows and things. You know, there are big issues.
I still don't think we want them going through windows, though, do we?
Perhaps not, but we want them to be able to see through windows. I'm just concerned that it's not going to be the kind of place that a lot of places people are going to want to go, that are the people that we're most concerned about making sure they've got a place to go.
I would encourage us to think about what it is that we really need and are looking for, and then let some folks think about it and put it together and come back with a solution, as opposed to kind of just saying no. I think that it's worth a lot more thought than that, and I think you know, this is the thoughtful discussion that are the right inputs to it.
Yeah. Okay. Are we making like a master list of what the needs are somewhere, so people could go in and edit it if they come up with other ideas, or filter them to whoever is the master editor? Because I don't have a clear image of my mind of what the needs are. I know the study 5 years ago, 7 years ago, whatever time it was, determined that we needed a new senior center. Did it specify specific shortcomings that we know we need to address? And do we have, I would hope from the survey, we'll get some sense of additional ones when we do get the survey results. But do we have data-based definitions of needs? I know we know if we want a billiard room, we need more space because you can't even pull the pole back. But, you know, other than that, do we really have a good needs list and a process for creating it?
I kind of think that's what we're doing here, is exactly that from what we know so far.
It feels like it's kind of bouncing around and focusing on square footage.
Marilyn, and Michael, I do see you. Forget that, unlike most of the seniors, there was 16 different places that members visited. And that was part of what.
That's true.
So they have seen what's possible elsewhere. We have seen what's possible elsewhere.
Yeah, no, I've been out there too.
The UMass thing did point out the 2017 some specifics, but not anywhere near the details as far as, you know, crafts and this kind of thing, but, you know, general areas. But and there's a time, there could be a time element too, as far as even the UMass, you've missed those meetings, but that's it. Given what we need to do vis-a-vis the process as far as the town, if we do anything,
Yeah.
as far as the select board, town meeting, all those kinds of things, and conceivably even a town-wide vote.
Right.
So all that's into play here too, as far as, you know, because people, I definitely heard from people, they don't want something 5 years from now.
Yeah.
They want something, you know, as soon as possible. We don't want to waste this opportunity. Totally agree with you. But Michael, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I think that Mark made the point that we're trying to develop that list of real needs. And what we're also trying to do is think about if this is an available space that's in the downtown that has lots of real positive attributes, can it satisfy enough of those identified needs to make this you know, something that's worth doing for the next 10, 15 years? And that's certainly not an obvious that we have not completed that list of needs carefully enough in that spreadsheet that I saw earlier. I think is a good crack at it. We need to then digest that quite a bit with the drawings and other things, and that's what the architect I think is doing. But there's, you know, there are other pieces to this. The cost of doing all of these things, the cost of putting in enough windows, the space, even as the architect drew it, what those costs are, and how that all plays out. My comment to Marilyn is we're not at the point where we're going to decide today that, oh yeah, this is the plan, we're good for it, let's go. So we need the input, we need feedback on those spreadsheets, particularly.
Okay, John Sasso.
Yes, the spreadsheet to the plans.
Okay, thank you. That helps. What just to sum
John
it up,
Sasso.
what would help?
Excuse me, Marilyn. Excuse me, John Sasso has his hand up. Okay.
I think Ron's hand's been up like the whole entire time.
Oh, I'm
but
sorry.
It might be blending into the background. Just want to point that out.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Ron.
It's just it's related to John's comments from before as well too. John, we produced that list of all the needs that we had. I used that list when I created my little draft in there. So John, I did take your list, and I think it's a great list. It's a really good start of all the things that we needed, and I incorporated that. That's how I drew the things that I wanted in my area. So it has been. We do have a really good list that's been inputted over the many months that we've been working on this. So it's a really good start of stuff.
Sorry, I missed your hand, Ron.
That's all right. That's okay.
John Sasso.
Thanks, John. I'm glad to hear that, Ron. I certainly, I think we all did feel, and to answer, I think one of Marilyn's questions. I know Mark tried to allude to this. The report from UMass back in 2017 didn't go anywhere near into this level of detail at all. It really was a kind of a top level, hey, you know, you need better transportation, you need more affordability, you need some more space, you need some more staff. I mean, it was, you know, pretty broad, and it kind of used comparison and data just to justify that, you know, we were falling short. And I think that's the signal that we kind of walked away with, or at least I walked away with from reading that report. Now, it was important because I think it was a wake-up call that, hey, you know, we really are behind the 8 ball. But it by no means did it address what we're trying to do now. Circling back to what Mark said earlier, what we're talking about tonight, though, this whole process is one piece of a potentially bigger puzzle that has to be figured out. in terms of how this, if it even is an option, how this would compare against what other things we might want to do or be able to do in the community. So, and I, I certainly would add the term hopeful that something from this perspective would work, because there are some benefits. But I'm very realistic that it, even given the constraints, it's not going to satisfy and solve every single need we have. So I think I certainly am pretty wide-eyed about that. I would like to just reiterate, I think it would be really helpful. I don't know where this spreadsheet lives, and I realize we can't all edit it at the same time, but it would be really helpful to get out to the committees and the people a consolidated list and spreadsheet that people can look at and potentially send comments back to Jenna and Amy, so that we can kind of understand what that looks like. And I do think using that to assess or compare against what's been proposed versus what we have versus what we think we need. There's a lot of things you mentioned, Marilyn, that don't actually appear on that list per se, because they're things that when we had this discussion before, we all said, well, we have to have that, right? We have to have a handicapped accessible bathroom. We have to have this. So I think there's some assumptions that we probably need to add that will guide an architect or anybody that's going to be looking at this as well. So that may be something that we missed in considering that approach. So I guess I would just like to ask it, as part of this, if we could, whoever holds the master sheet that came out of this process to compare, it would be great to get that out to everybody to review and just send feedback. If COA wants to put a full version together independently, that's certainly up to them. But I think it would be helpful just so we can look at that, because I think that's when I looked at the sheet that you put back up on the screen earlier. That's what I was focused on. I was like, okay, this looks great, but how does this compare against what it is we really have asked for? So
that would help tremendously, John. I think that sounds like the piece that's missing is I've never seen the list that you've put together from all the site visits and things. So it's just information I don't have and other people don't have.
We're literally putting it together kind of as we're going along here. So I think we a couple of weeks ago when we met, and John can certainly John O'Neill can chime in on this. The action was, we need to put this together like now.
Okay.
So we kind of instantaneously over the last 2 or 3 weeks, and even after that, it was too late. It was like we needed to get it done so that we could give something to somebody to give us an idea of what this might look like, because we do have some time constraints. So please, we did not hide anything from anybody. It's been a work in progress, and we definitely need to take what we have and give people an opportunity to take a look at it some more. But I think the process that we're going through here is the right one.
Okay.
Thank you. And I don't mean to
John,
suggest that anyone's hiding anything or anything bad. I think this is a really exciting opportunity. I just got nervous about, we're talking square footage here and not talking about elder experiences. And I got nervous. So when you're ready to share that, I think that will help tremendously.
John Parsons and then Nancy. Okay, John?
Actually, I think Nancy was up before me, but I won't take that much time.
But I have to go with the recount members first. That's the only thing.
Okay.
No, I mean,
I'll keep my hand up more. Back in June, I went to a baseball game out in Worcester, that brand new stadium they made for the Woo Sox, which is, it's kind of a nice looking stadium. It's really pretty good. But then I was in North Carolina and I went to a Durham Bulls game. The Durham Bulls play in the same league as the Woo Sox. And they've got about an 18-year-old stadium. And I started looking around this place and I said, the city of Worcester should be ashamed of what they did. This place is 18 years old and it is so much better. It's so much even more modern. I would hate to see us come up with a final product and just be looking around at other centers and saying, they're all still so much better. I'd like to keep that in mind. Just a couple of quick thoughts on some of the stuff that was talked about earlier. I think a good size lounge area is important. Some of the centers, they have like a coffee urn there where people can go in, get a cup of coffee and just sit down and talk. You've got a lot of widows, a lot of widowers who are alone. It just gives them a place to congregate. And as far as parking goes, again, from what I know at another center, the 2-hour parking around our current Pleasant Street Center doesn't really cut it. Well, people don't get tickets because I don't think they're down there ticketing. But in one town, you get a parking ticket, a parking sticker you can put up on your dashboard. And if you're parked there, they don't ticket you. So I think some of these 2-hour limits downtown, if we could work out a program like that, it would alleviate some of the possible parking concerns.
Yeah, thank you. Nancy?
I just had a question. It goes back to the timeline and this new addition of considering Walgreens. How does the feasibility study fit into this? I mean, there was $300,000 allocated to a feasibility study. And is this group thinking that you're not going to do the feasibility study, or you still are going to do the feasibility study, or the feasibility study is going to be related just to Walgreens? If you could clarify that point for me, that would be helpful.
Okay, Mark? Yeah.
Take a general swipe at it. So we made a plan to do a feasibility study. The select board allocated some ARPA funds, $300,000 to do that. I think we've allocated roughly 30,000 of that so far to the current architectural firm that's doing the work. The timeline, if we were to pursue this building, if that turns out to be something that's interesting, the timeline to execute that won't allow for that full feasibility study to take place if we were to move forward. If we weren't moving forward, then the process would go back to, I think, exactly what we all thought it was going to be. This kind of came up as an opportunity that just has a shorter expiration date on it.
And Mark, who makes a decision whether we go forward with the feasibility study or we look at going with Walgreens? Who makes that decision?
So the decision on Walgreens, so at the end of the day, the select board would have to be empowered to make a decision on it, which is going to require town meeting approval and a vote for probably a debt exclusion on if it's a purchase. If it's a rental, I think just town meeting would have the authority on that, or a lease agreement. I think the concern is that if we don't act in probably in calendar 22, we may not have the option of the building at all. It may just go to another use, and we can continue with our plans. We've all talked about how interested we are in this space, and unfortunately, we may have to make a decision. Fortunately or unfortunately, we may have to make a decision sooner, or on another building that may come forward in the RFP that was just issued. So I think the answer is that this kind of got dropped in as a potential opportunity a little ahead of schedule, to everyone's surprise. But that's kind of where we are.
So can I ask one more question?
Sure.
The feasibility study would be conducted by consultants that are experts in the area of identifying needs and looking at requirements. But what I'm hearing is that Recalc will then become the group that is going to be the final word. Recalc and the Elder and Human Services would then become the body that identifies the needs and the space requirements for a senior center, and not through a feasibility study. Is that correct?
So
No.
I wouldn't. So what I'd suggest to you is this: a feasibility study would talk about the needs most certainly. It would also look at where the opportunities are to do it, and what would be the best options to look at. So we may all want to have an open cornfield to do all sorts of things in, and we don't have one in town. So that's not an option. So there's a balance between those things going on. Yes, it most certainly would be someone that has expertise in this area in doing that work. And whatever the next phase is, whether it relates to this current building or a different one, is going to involve that. And again, even if it is this building, it's going to involve getting that expertise brought into what we're talking about. I think that the real change, again, is that there may be an opportunity to do something with this space or maybe another one downtown in the very near term. And a decision has to be made. I think actually, so Recalc reports to the select board. It's formed by the select board. Council on Aging is a committee responding to the select board. So the select board should be where that discussion is going to take place. The decision on, so the no decision could come from the select board. The yes decision would be select board, town meeting, and potentially the voters for a debt exclusion.
Hey, John, can I jump in for a second?
Yes, sure.
So Nancy, I want to just go back to something you said, and maybe Mark, you can clarify this. Whether or not we do a feasibility study, the core needs of what we as a community need is coming out of this process one way or the other. And so I want to be careful, just because even if we hired even if we went down the path of, hey, we're not going to deal with Walgreens and we're going to go off and do our own feasibility study, and they go look at different spaces, they're still going to get a list of needs from us. And when I say us, I don't just mean Recalc. I certainly mean the community as a whole. I hope COA feels part of that. I mean, obviously, it's why we have representatives from COA at this meeting and in Recalc. So I definitely think the whole needs perspective is, yes, someone that's doing that feasibility study can help, tailor those a little bit better. But we're the ones that have to provide that input. And I think the accelerated process that we jumped into now, pushing us to really do this before the study was done, before the survey was taken care of, before we finished all of our efforts, that's kind of what's pushed us here. But it's, in the end, I don't think it's any different than where we would have ended up. So anyone else can jump in on that. But I just want to be clear that it isn't just because we're not doing a feasibility study that, this other thing of needs isn't going to happen. It's happening whether we like it or not, whether it's out of this process or whether it would be an input to the feasibility study.
I hear you, John, but unfortunately, I don't know if I agree with you on that. So, but I hear you.
Okay.
To me, it sounds like this is being fast tracked. I understand that there is a time frame here, but way back in '92, when the firehouse was chosen for the senior center, it was not a good match back then, and it continues not to be a good match. So I just want to make sure that that Walgreens space has been empty for 8 years. So the thought that someone's going to sweep in and buy that space in the next 12 months just seems far-fetched to me.
Well, no, but Nancy, something has changed. There's a new owner of the Walgreens building. And so something is going to happen, and it won't be going on for another 8 years. Okay, Mark?
If I could just add to that. So Walgreens has been paying rent on that space. So the need to do something else in that building hasn't been there at all. So this is a change in circumstance that the town may have a good opportunity to look at, or could say no. But I think it's really important that no matter what, and I think John Sasso, you're spot on, it's on us to articulate the needs and what we're looking for. It's not an outsider, it's us. We've got UMass who's helping us with some activities. We've done the benchmarking at different places between the council and the Recalc discussions. We're talking a lot about what our needs are. I think my concern would be that if we don't articulate our needs and just rely on somebody else, I think we won't move the ball very far. I think we'll delay a decision. And I think we'll work ourselves into something that's very expensive that the community still has to weigh in on. And there's, with any project, we have to convince people that it's well thought out, it makes sense, it's meeting the needs, and people are going to be willing to pay for it.
Mhm.
And all those things need to come together.
Okay, Nancy, I just want to get to a dialogue back and forth between the Michael.
So you know, we talk about the feasibility. I think that something that's very important to consider is that the Walgreens space or other space downtown, if the RFP finds other spaces, are key parts of any feasibility study. So we have to do both pieces. We have to really sort out what our needs are and a hierarchy of needs all the way down to pickleball courts. And we also have to think
all the way up to pickleball courts.
Oh yeah, right. We also have to think about the spaces that are available, because that's the key part of a feasibility study, is what's feasible. And so yeah, this happened a little bit faster than we thought, but it's right on the time. You know, the critical path of doing this project is to understand our needs and what's feasible in town and how much it's going to cost, and how to make that all come together into a package that the town's going to want. So I don't think this is before the horse or anything like that.
Okay, okay, Ron? Yeah.
Yeah, just to sort of reiterate a little bit what John's saying is, feasibility study is, to me, we provide them with the needs that we want, and is it feasible? You go figure out, is it feasible to do this? And that's the way I look at it. Here's what the community wants. Here's the list of all the things that we've said. Here's the study that we've done. Is this site feasible to do the majority of the things that we want to do? If it's not, it's not. But the experts will tell us whether it's feasible, affordable, things like that. Right. But the input, you're right, John, comes from us. It comes from us, COA, community at large, survey, everything else.
To me, it was kind of like this accelerated the process, as people have said. You know, what's good. I mean, it focused us. It is all about the needs, and that's what we're trying to do. And this kind of made us, like I said, move a little bit more quickly than we had anticipated. The survey was going to be a key thing to get more broader input than both the Recalc and Council on Aging combined could offer, because we also are looking at, we want to get far more people involved in a senior center / and we still have the issue of community center and how that plays in, how we integrate that. So there's those kind of things, playing out here. So it's like Mark says, the good and bad news. We're moving a little bit more quickly than we had planned on, and yet on the other hand, the sense of urgency I was hearing from seniors. There was that, and now we have the added to that is the urgency of making a decision on a particular place. And it could be, I think people should, I think hopefully would agree, is that we could come down and say, it doesn't meet enough of the needs, or it's going to be too difficult to make it work, and we have to move on, even if they submit the bid. So that's a possibility, but the final decision is not going to be, Recalc or the council. Hopefully our input's going to be, taken into consideration. I'm sure it will be. But okay, John Sasser, you've had your hand up. Yeah.
Sorry, just one last comment here. As I think about this, again, we've all agreed that this is something that's come up as an opportunity that we're trying to explore. It is a mini feasibility project, quite frankly, is what it is. I mean, we are providing them some needs, and we're saying, here, tell us if this space can do it. So I really do think, not to sound like a broken record, we need to know what things we're not able to address here. But it's interesting as I think about this, and I go back to some of the conversations that we had during some of the forums, some of the community forums, where some of the seniors said, well, would it be feasible and option to have, distributed things happening around town? Like this place doesn't have the place for outdoor pickleball courts or whatever it may be, whatever. Okay, well, where's that going to happen? If we feel that's critical enough of a need and it can't be met here, can't be met somewhere else. So there's still, I think there's a lot of other questions that we still haven't answered here yet. That's why I think it's really important to see that list of what's not being met and understand. Jenna and her team have put together some partnerships with the library and certain things, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on here. So we can't. I don't think we can look at. I still don't think we can look at this in its individually without understanding the context of everything else that's trying to go on right now. So we're putting a huge effort in on this because we know there's a huge hole and a huge need. And to Ron's point, if this doesn't work out, if it's not right, we'll move on. But I think it is it's certainly worth our diligence, and also to make sure we understand how this potentially could satisfy, given the multiple competing priorities in the community that we have right now. Where does this fall on that list? And we need to understand how much of this we can get done. And if we can't get enough done, then we're going to make the recommendation, okay, don't move forward with it. But if we can, and we understand how the rest of this works out, I think we need to be honest with ourselves and try to make the best recommendation we can. So,
okay.
All right. Thank you.
Marilyn?
Unmute.
You're muted, Marilyn.
Pardon me?
Oh, yeah, no, okay.
Okay. I'm very much, I think, in line with what you're saying, John Sasso. My vision of what we thought might happen was that when we got money to be, expanding things in the interim, is that there would be things like, and in fact, Jean had talked about this, Jean Delios, renting an auditorium for an event here, renting some gym space there, finding short-term things that didn't need renovation, so money would go into short-term. I was thinking 5 years, just because short-term feels like 5 years in my brain. And meantime, the full analysis would go on, including the very thoughtful survey that we're hoping will get a really more expansive input from the community, and that we would continue to go through very systematically those needs, and that long-term, if it were to go forward, I was envisioning there probably would be a new or totally renovated major renovation somewhere that also would be a community center, most likely. I mean, certainly it was not a given, but I think that there are things that can be done I hesitate to call it short term because my 5-year thing may not be what the rest of you are thinking, but I think there are smaller things that could be done well that would have the effect of improving things. I mean, we could make arrangements with local restaurants that don't have much business at certain hours of the day and designate senior drop-in times with, subsidized cards from the senior center. We could find, space that's not being used in gyms at certain hours of the day and ask if we have senior hour and put Zumba classes or whatever over there. I mean, there are things we could do to make it better without renovating Walgreens. And if Walgreens can be renovated in a cost manageable way and really meet the full range of needs, that's wonderful. It's just hard to imagine it right now. And parking just glares at me. I know in North Andover, the reason they're building an entirely new senior center is parking was not sufficient. Wasn't they didn't have any, they had a big parking lot, but they shared it with other people, and that's all it took. And they're getting a huge, beautiful new facility. I mean, we're kind of setting the bar so high, and we're thinking about all the other competing things. I think in the end, of course, we have to think about all the competing things facing the town, but I'd like to see us fully go through the exercise of saying, if we could do this right, what would it take? And ultimately, is Walgreens going to be a place that could be morphed into that. And maybe it could. I mean, I'm not opposed. I don't have an opinion yet on Walgreens. I just have concerns. And I think they're very expensive. And I question whether we're not going to be looking at, but now we need a new senior center in 5 or 10 years if we do go with it. And so it could make matters worse because we'll have spent all that money and have the decision still before us as the 7,000 grows to 8,000 or 9,000 seniors and it becomes more and more inadequate. Are we really going to be that much further ahead unless we think it through carefully now, including the 10-year projection population-wise of what we might need, because people are getting older. Anyway, I'll shut up again.
Hey, Mark?
I could just quickly, I think it's, I don't want to reiterate everything else, but imagine if this opportunity came upon us for this space and we didn't have recalc already formed and we hadn't done all of these benchmarking surveys and we hadn't started the process and we hadn't done a lot of the things that we've done over the last X months. Then I think we'd really be saying, oh boy, yuck. As much as we all want that space because of its location and all sorts of other things, it would be a devil of a time. And I'm being careful with my words, sorry. We've done a lot of stuff. We're continuing to do a lot of stuff. And if we want to consider this space, there's a real important timeline. Marilyn, I'm largely in agreement, except for a couple of main things. And the biggest one is, no matter what, no matter how long we wait, we will not meet every single one of the needs. And if we hold out for that, I think we're going to miss a lot of opportunities along the way that really would do a very good job. Not perfect, but a really good job. This one may or may not fit those needs, but now is the opportunity to talk about it, to not prejudge, if you will. Look, we know parking's an issue. There's actually a lot going on to look at alternatives. We should be making this list of what are the things that we want to get further addressed. Then we can do more evaluation of it. I'm concerned that we could throw the baby out with the bathwater if we're not careful.
I used that phrase earlier today myself, Mark, and got teased for it. But I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't want to come out and say no and then go through and do a feasibility study and come back and say, wow, that would have been a superior alternative and now it's off the table.
Yeah, and again, I'm not saying no. Please don't imagine I've come in here to say no. I think a huge gap is that I don't have that list that you're all working on. I've not seen it. So I think it's a knowledge gap. Clearly, I know you're all working really hard and are doing all these things. I just don't have any of that information. I'm seeing snippets and the snippets are making me feel like that's all you're thinking about. And obviously it's not. So it's
right.
just an information thing.
There's no recommendation that's going to come out of recalc that's going to be for something that's just going to last 5 years. That's not going to happen. I mean, that's not what we're about. And I agree with you as far as there are things that can be done. I actually was involved in something to do with restaurants years ago for older people. So, I mean, but the reality is there aren't places in the town that even satisfy recreation's needs. We can do more, but there's no way I think we're going to be able to satisfy people for, let's say, for your 5-year plan. But anyway, I think we can and should do more, and not even, in the interim, however long the interim is. Maybe it'll be 5 years. I'm hoping it isn't, but we'll see. Okay, Mark, do you still have your hand up? You want to say something else? Okay. No. Okay, Michael.
I would just say I'm very hopeful about the RFP that's out right now. About other spaces in the town, and maybe we'll have some nice presidents come in a month. That doesn't mean that the process that we're going through right now, as difficult as it is, and in the end of August is a hard time to do this sorts of thing. This is it's vital stuff. So, and I don't think it's changing anything. It's gonna make us all smarter about this, and I'm really hopeful.
Okay. All right. Famous, Anybody want to get the last word before we move on? Oh, Marilyn, of course.
Just again, I'd say, of course, Marilyn, that's my job, is just think about the population growth. Personally, I speculate that if you build what you're diagramming or something close, you might double the number of people who are actively involved in the senior center in a period of 12 months. Purely hypothetical, that's just my gut. But we know there's 7,000 people out there and we're only talking to 1,000. If suddenly you've got nice places to go do these things, I mean, that's what this is supposed to do, attract people.
Well,
And
the first thing we need to advocate for your plan and any other plan in the future is more monies for the Council on Aging staffing.
We can't pay for staffing. I think that's prohibited from the trust funds, but we can talk about that. We're not allowed to.
But outside this trust fund, I'm talking about as far as the town budgeting process.
You mean elder services and elder services?
Yes, elder services.
Yeah, Council on Aging can't do that. We wish we could. But anyway, I just remind everyone, expect that population to be growing and expect a short-term surge in particular. And so just think 10 years down the road, maybe 3 times the people using it when you're thinking about that space, if you want it to be a long-term thing. So that's my last word on this.
All right. There's no vote to be taken, so we'll move on to the next issue. And
John, can I just make sure we have an action? What is the action out of this topic here? What's the next steps? Who needs to be doing what?
That's what I was gonna say. I think you had a great point about going back to the needs table, John. So I think that the architect came up with that consolidated plan after seeing those 3 or 4 spreadsheets that everyone provided. So if people can take a look at that spreadsheet that was presented tonight again and add their feedback on what is missing, what they think is really important that's missing from that sheet, that would be good to send to me. And then we can bring that to the next meeting with the architect on September 19th. I think that was a great suggestion you had. So any feedback and anyone who has some concrete needs that are not being outlined right now, just on that basic layout that was provided, I think that's a good place to start. And then we can revisit it in the next meeting after we meet with the architect on Monday.
Can you send that out in Excel or do you only have it in PDF?
I was only sent to me in a PDF, but I'm sure that we could reformat it into an Excel or see if they can reformat it and send it in Excel. So if you wanted to do like a Google Doc or something.
Well,
John?
even if you could just get them to send out the source Excel sheet would be good. I mean,
Sure.
I'm sure it's got to be an Excel sheet. I mean, so I'm assuming they have that file somewhere.
Sure, I can ask.
Be very helpful. I don't think you can do Google Docs, because that implies.
Yeah, I think you have to send it out independently to all of us, and then we have to send you back specific comments to you.
Right.
Sure. Yep.
And could you share it with the Council on Aging as well?
Oh, I would hope. Jenna, she's asking you.
Oh,
No,
sure.
I know. It just not, you have lots of documents that we don't see, and I wouldn't expect were necessarily words. I just don't want to take it for granted.
No, it definitely should go to the council.
And then a lot of the items, they're in the packet for recalc too. So a lot of the information should be posted online at some point. I know that there are some technical issues, but if you want any of the information that recalc has gone over in prior meetings, I can easily forward you all the packets, if that's helpful as well.
That would be, thanks.
Yeah, that was what we had agreed before you were in staffing this, Jenna. That was what we had agreed that they would, both Nancy and Marilyn would get, directly any, any of the minutes or information that we got.
Yeah, they are included on every meeting and every packet.
Okay.
I thought they were actually going out to the entire council at one point, John.
I believe you're correct.
Yeah, that's not just Nancy and myself. And
I didn't know whether it was Amy going to do that. That's what I'm not.
I think Kevin used to do it.
Okay.
So every meeting that Recalc had, every agenda and meeting packet was sent out to everyone on the COA and Recalc.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And we've had a number of meetings where we actually formally had joint meetings. We haven't done
Yes.
that in a while, but I think that's where the need first came up, was that we really needed to be informed, and saves a lot of me coming in and saying, oh, I didn't know you had a list. And everyone's saying, oh, but you're not thinking of our list. Well, I've never seen the list. That's all. So.
Sure. Yeah, that's not a problem for me to add some emails to the list that goes out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. John Sessa, do you feel that we'll have a concrete next step for this?
Yeah, I just think also, Jenna, I would suggest that when you send that out, give everybody a deadline.
Good idea.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. Now,
Thank you.
communications plan, John.
Do you know Laura has had her hand up for a long time?
Oh, no, I didn't.
It was not a long time. Now the list that you're talking about, was in the packet that you sent us, correct?
Yes.
And it's just a list of needs. Is this what we're talking about?
Yes, in the
And it
space
has
that's
Michael's
needed.
comments and the Council of Aging comments. So that's what you're referring to.
Yep, in the staff comments, but also you can certainly reference back to John Sasso's spreadsheet as well that was sent out.
I missed all this, Jenna. I didn't get
Yeah,
it.
I'm not sure what this spreadsheet is.
And I certainly didn't get John Sasso's comments. I don't even recall getting the thing for me to comment, and I was waiting for it.
Yeah, I sent out several attachments in the recalc.
And maybe, this last time, but I thought
from
maybe I
Jean,
missed,
from
but
Gina.
I didn't.
Yeah, I
see
think I missed something too.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so what does everyone need as far as a spreadsheet?
John has a spreadsheet. Is that something new or is that an old doc?
Can I just jump in here real quick? Michael, did you say, or was it Ron, that you guys used the input that I shared to create or update a sheet on your side?
That's what I remember using. I'm trying to look for it now, but that's what I remember using.
So let me just.
And I think I did, but as I said, I don't remember.
I'm going to share my screen. Can everybody see my screen?
Yeah.
So does this look familiar to anybody?
Yep.
No,
No.
Okay. All right. So
Maybe it was sent to the subgroup. Maybe that's what happened.
Yeah.
So I created this sheet. This actually, it's dated August 14th, so it was right after the last meeting. I sent this. I think I don't remember who I sent it to be honest with you. I'd have to go back and look, but I didn't send it to everybody because I'm not allowed to. Bottom line is this is my input. This is not a consolidated input by any stretch of the imagination. This was just my input. So Ron or Michael, if you guys took this and you updated this and incorporated other things, no, you're shaking your head no.
No, I didn't update it. I just used it when I started doing my little diagram on the floor space. I said, oh, well, we should include this. We should include this.
So
Right, and that's what the architect did. They took all of the individual spreadsheets that were submitted to the subgroup and made that consolidated list. So if the ask is that I send out all of the individual spreadsheets that people made to the committee, I can do that.
I would suggest not. That's just my opinion. I'll let you guys can. I think we should make it as easy as possible and look at a consolidated sheet. I mean, if people want my input, they're certainly welcome to it. That's up to you guys. But I think if you guys use that consolidated spreadsheet as your communication means, then that's what people should be looking at. I apologize. I can't say whether this was supposed to be sent out to everybody, but this is what I had put together and provided as input. Actually, I take
John
that
Sasso,
back.
I have to step aside for a minute. Will you chair the meeting in my absence?
Yeah, sure. So I actually did think that one of the actions from the last meeting was for everybody to provide input, and B was for me to create the sheet that folks could use. So this was the sheet, and this is what I sent out, but it sounds like it didn't go out to everybody. Is that a fair statement?
Correct.
Okay. All right. What would be, I'm gonna stop sharing here.
And I think a lot of those things that are highlighted on the spreadsheet are in that layout.
No, I'm that's what I'm saying. So what I'm going to do, by the way, with the sheet that you send out to me is I'm going to go back to my list. I'm going to do a comparison as well. So I'm going to do that anyhow. My recommendation, and I'll leave it up to the group. I would say if we can get the sheet, the consolidated sheet that the architect created from all the inputs, I think that's what we should be looking at. I think sending out multiple sheets will get people confused. Is everybody okay with that? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Jenna, let's just send out, if you can get the source Excel sheet, that would be great. And then again, make sure everybody has, give them a week and get feedback. And Marilyn, if you guys on COA have specific input that you want to incorporate as a result of your meeting, I would say also use that sheet as input, but then send that back that way as well, so that we can use those needs as the baseline for the comments.
So one comment is that I think I was looking at that spreadsheet that you just showed when I did my interpretation. I think there was my interpretation of that spreadsheet was those were activities, and then trying to figure out spaces, and you might have multiple activities in one.
Right. So the intent, if I remember from the last meeting, the intent was for us to put together a list of needs from an activity basis, and then allow somebody else to allow you guys in your subcommittee to translate that into facility needs.
Right.
So we weren't trying to say we need a room of 1,000 square feet. We needed to say we want an area for yoga. We wanted an area, and then you guys, your job was to kind of take that and consolidate it. So that's why I put the sheet together like that. So again, I'll apologize that it didn't get out like that, but I think we now have a consolidated sheet, so let's work off of that.
Great.
I make one suggestion. When you look at the sheet that Jenna sent out tonight that brings together a few inputs, there are different forms. Sometimes it says, square feet, and people know how to do that. Great. Other times it says number of people we anticipate. I think that could be a helpful input. So, for example, a game room doesn't need to hold 100 people, other than maybe bingo. If we're thinking exercise space, is it for 5 people or is it for 50 people? Those kinds of inputs could be helpful. And then all of us, realizing that some things might have multiple purposes. It may be that you can do yoga sometimes and another activity at other times. So it's not necessarily saying I need a dedicated space for yoga, I need a dedicated space for this. But what the kinds of needs are, the number of people that might be involved in some of those things, I think that to me, that was very helpful. And I think that led the architect, I believe, to be able to say, okay, this is roughly the amount of square feet that could accommodate those types of activities.
And that was my expectation when I put that sheet together the way I put it together, because that's what was needed. It's like, it isn't about us telling people how many square feet. It's about what's the activity and how many people, and then how do you size the room appropriately.
Yeah, and the Pleasant Street Center staff and myself probably went over the layout 3 or 4 times and went over the current space square footage compared to the new space square footage, and did make a lot of comparisons in regard to activities and the number of people as well as the square footage. So there was a lot of time and effort that was put in by the staff to really go over this layout and make sure it was really thoughtful in regards to both the number of people it serves and the square footage.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's what we were looking for. Okay, John, we're going to move on. We'll move on to communication plan. Is that okay?
Yes. Yes.
So, couple quick updates. So first, I did notice that the website did get updated with a few more items. Some of the older materials have been posted. Jenna, do you know if the second newsletter was posted or put out anywhere? That was the one I had also sent off after the meeting last in August.
I'm not sure about the communication newsletter. I'm not sure where that landed with getting out. I know the recalc communication was something that I was focusing on.
Well, I know that there's obviously the survey and the postcards that I believe those have all have those. I haven't actually seen it in my mailbox yet.
So interesting. My wife got it through the Reading Rec because she was on the Reading Rec.
Yeah,
and it came
yeah,
from
I got
Reading
the
Rec.
Reading Rec email as well.
Yep, we sent it
but-
out on the Reading Rec email. It's on the town website. The postcard was
library.
being mailed out today, and then I brought paper copies to the library, the senior center, the Pleasant Street Center, and the town hall. And then I have additional hard copies and additional copies of the postcard that I could also bring to the Fall Street Fair on Sunday.
Okay. So, not as critical, but one of the actions from last meeting was to post the
newsletter communication.
the newsletter,
Yeah.
which I did update with input from the input that I got last time. I don't know. Can you guys see my screen? So this is newsletter number 2. Really, it was the focus of this was really to summarize the community forum work.
Great.
So
Yeah,
I believe,
I'll send that. You know what? I'll send that out tomorrow as a follow-up, and maybe just include the survey link again on
Yep.
that.
Yep.
Or next Monday to get some more.
that's fine. Yep. So one of the questions that I guess I was going to ask. So well, let me give just people a quick update on the communication activities, and then last meeting I was talking about a video. We lost our videographer. He's back to school. But having said that, he did a few things. He and I did some work. I've actually been pretty tied up with some other things in the meantime, so I need to refocus some efforts. But I think we actually have a pretty good outline of a video, a pretty good idea of exactly what images we want to put forward. We do still need to get a couple of existing senior center shots to add into it. At the moment, I'm looking at that activity as a little bit lower priority, given some of the other things that are going on. But it has not fallen off the list. I just want to let folks know that unfortunately it's taken a little bit of a back burner activity. I know the next topic is the Fall Street Fair, so I don't want to talk about that. But I guess I want to ask the folks, given that we've now gone pretty deep into this question about Walgreens. We talked about this last time. I'll ask the question again without having a preconceived notion of an answer. Is there a need for some additional communication about what's going on at this point? Are we getting, I know at the last meeting, Amy was talking about, what questions should we answer if people ask? Is there a need for us to put something together on this at this point?
We're going to get a lot of questions at the town fair, I would imagine.
Yeah.
So what's happening with Walgreens? Yeah,
I've already gotten a lot of questions.
I'm sure.
Okay.
Mark, go
Mark
ahead.
has his hands up. Yeah.
Yeah, until the RFP is back, there really aren't any updates that have any validity. Is there an RFP? Yes. What are we doing? Don't know yet.
Yeah. Okay.
I heard that. I heard you could lease the space. So we have an RFP and we got a response. But I think I don't want to put out information that is really incomplete and just kind of leads to more and more questions. I think once the RFP is back, there'll be a discussion at the select board, and maybe one of the action items that comes out of that is to talk about, okay, how do we share that information more with the community? There'll be people who watch, the 10 people who watch the meeting, and then how do we share it more broadly? And part of it can be updates to various committees, and probably there should be more of an outreach at that point, saying, hey, here's what we're thinking about. I think, John, your newsletters are really the best updates that exist by far in terms of what's going on. I think that's what the goal was. I think that's what we use. Everything else is conjecture until we take some action. And even if there is something that can be a next step, there has to be, our process, Recalc's process, is really important in terms of thinking about it, making recommendations, and then it probably will involve some negotiation, which will be executive session kind of stuff in terms of finding out what the best arrangement could be, and then it'll be, if there's a decision to move forward in some way, shape, or form, we have to get to town meeting. So there really is going to have to be a big communication effort at that point. But we'll have data to share. We'll have information to say, here's what's going on. Here's the background. Here's what's going on. Here's information for you to process because you're going to be asked to vote on it. I just think I just want to be careful not to, feed rumors or compromise the town's position. I think those are both bad outcomes.
No, I don't disagree with you, Mark. I felt it was important to ask the question again because, like everybody else just said, I've also gotten questions as well. And my answer is the community's looking at this as an option, but there's no definitive answer yet. And when there is a definitive answer or a better information, I think then we should be ready to share it.
Yeah. But can the Recalc website, frankly, and the newsletters and the updates, can that be where we're referring people to? Because at the moment, that's what it was designed to be. Is that this is the forum where this is being discussed and explored.
But we don't say anything. So we're certainly not saying anything about that at all right now on that website. We didn't actually include, we deliberately did not include anything in the most recent newsletter for it. And I still think that was the right decision because the focus of that newsletter was really just to continue to provide information and transparency to the community in terms of what we're doing. I think we do have to have a good answer in terms of, at the meeting at the fall street fair, when people ask, we should have a script or at least an agreed to set of statements that we can make, which may simply be, there is no answer yet. I mean, maybe that is the answer. But as far as the communication, as far as other aspects of the communication plan is concerned, I still think we're kind of walking down those pieces. I haven't, other than potentially the need to create some other communication around this whole subject, which we're not really ready to do right now. I don't see any other change to the plan and the tactics, and I'll update it. If we can get the second newsletter out, that'll be great. I'll continue to work on the video. But I think with that, I would say, John, I'll turn it back over to you for the Fall Street Fair update. Although Michael has his hands up. If you have a comment.
And then Marilyn, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry.
And Ron, okay. So you don't have a little yellow hand going up though.
Yeah, I can't.
Right. See, that's what happens to you.
I can't see that.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Michael, go ahead.
So I just think that it's important for us to say that we are aware of the RFP and we're thinking about all of this stuff, and it's part of our Recalc activities in the feasibility and needs assessment. So
yes,
but reiterating Mark, certainly we haven't made any decision.
Okay, Marilyn, and then
I just wonder, could the newsletter be also sent to the Elder and Human Services distribution list? They have about 1,000 emails of people.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Great idea.
Okay, that would be great. That would help get it to the target audience, and also just again for the town fair issue. I've had quite a few people, my neighbors, Sally Hoyt, lots of people saying, I've heard the town's thinking of spending $18,000 a month on the Walgreens place. Tell me that's not true. There's information out there. I don't know who's spreading it, where it's coming from, but we do have some information that's just plain factual that we should be able to confirm at least at the town fair. Or people are just going to discredit us completely.
Okay, Ron and then Mark.
Jenna, I don't know if this comes under you, but Gene last time had some of the electronic billboards in town to talk about the other survey that we did. Is that something we can do again?
What were they? I'm sorry.
You know, like the big LED billboards that are powered about. I think Gene did that for the other survey to advertise it as people were coming down to talk about take the survey.
Okay, I think that's part of the police department. You're talking about the big signboard, right?
Yeah.
The orange signboard. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, yep, I can tackle that. A great suggestion as well.
Is that it, Ron?
Yeah, that's it. Sorry.
Okay, Mark.
Hey, Sean, I'm wondering, to the point everyone's bringing up, maybe Jenna connect with Fidel, and if Recalc is willing, I would be willing to work with them to think about just kind of a basic statement that could be used, simple, to the point. It probably is that there's a lot going on. You can see the newsletter. Hey, sign up. There is a request for proposals about downtown space. There is some potential opportunity at Walgreens that this group and others are going to be evaluating, and that's where we are.
Right. There was an article in the Chronicle, a front page article about this, actually.
Yeah, so it's going to be discussed at the select board. I guess, so look, we could share that, hey, we got a response to proposals that relates to a rental arrangement for 10 years. I think that's going to lead to, it's true. It's absolutely true. The board took no action on it so far, so it remains open. There's an additional RFP for the potential of buying some space downtown. That RFP is not closed, and we're waiting to see who's going to respond to it. And then we'll be working with that information. So, has there been discussion about the Walgreens building? Yes, and there'll be a lot more discussion about it. There's certainly no decisions have been, no evaluation has been done, no decisions have been made.
Okay. Nancy? Yeah.
Maybe you should also mention too something about the architectural drawings, because I've heard people have asked me about those, about the walkthroughs that have happened and what the response is and the drawings that have been developed. And I know it's all preliminary, but the information is out there, as Mayor said.
Okay, Mark, or you can.
So be careful. So there are no architectural drawings.
Well,
so there are drawings, and they're public. Yeah, there are drawings, and they're public. And in fact, they're in our packet, maybe for tonight.
Yes. Yes.
So that's all public information. Public. Absolutely. Yeah. So that's all true. And we can share that it's being evaluated and explored. That's where we are.
Right. Yeah.
So can I just add to the end of that?
To say though that we would not be exploring that kind of design if it were a rental, or do we even want to bother?
I'm interested in the input of the group. I think that the simpler and more straightforward it is, the better, and the more nuanced and kind of discussing.
Okay.
I'm not sure where that gets us. Do other people feel differently? I think that I'd rather kind of say, here's what's going on. Yes, there's information. Yes, you can look at it. Yes, it's being evaluated. No, there are no decisions yet.
All right, Michael and John, and then Jenna. Jenna, do you have a particular factual?
I was just going to suggest that maybe it would be helpful to stick to that that basic narrative that Mark's saying, but also I think maybe we should print out John's newsletter, so we could say, hey, this is the whole charge of Recalc. It's outlined in this newsletter. This is our second newsletter. We can even attach number 1 and 2. I can print like out a bunch of copies tomorrow and bring them down and say, hey, this is the updated communication about recalc. We want you to learn more about it. There's some exciting opportunities, but nothing set in stone right now. But this is everything we've been doing. We can even staple the postcard to the back too. That will get them to the survey and kind of do it that way. Like, hey, here's all the information. If you have any questions, please call the town hall and speak with Fidel, or reach out to Mark Doxer. Would you be comfortable with that, Mark? Not me. No, I'm just kidding. Not John O'Neill.
Right.
So I think
everyone think about that with the newsletter.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the newsletter is spot on. The other activities, so, you know, is there evaluation going on? Yes. Are there potential drawings being looked at and considered? Yes. Are we renting space? There's no decision. Are we buying space? There's no decision. You know, what are we doing? This is why we're here. It's being evaluated. And, you know, once we have more information, we can talk a lot more about it. You know, anything that's public is already public.
Okay, John Sasso?
Yeah, I was just gonna say the most important thing about that, whatever script you guys end up with, at the very end of the script, the most important thing we can say is, oh, by the way, this is not set in stone and your input is still needed. The best way to help influence this activity is to fill out that survey and get us your feedback. And that's really the, you know, that's the ask at the end, is to really say, okay, you ask about it and share, yep, this is the basics, this is what we need, this is what we know, here's what you can go look at, but we really need your input or else all this work is for naught. So I think that's really, if they're going to ask that question, we should drag them down that path.
Yep. And free form text is good too. So not just circle the boxes, circle the
sure.
the boxes, right? Yeah.
Okay, Marilyn?
I think the answer to this is yes. But just to be sure, will we have a pile of the postcards at the table on the town fair? And can we have a pile of the newsletter on the table at the town fair?
I can do that. I ordered 500 extra postcards, and I can print out just as many newsletters if that's helpful.
People typically take pleasantries, so I think they're likely to take this newsletter as well, and it might save answering some of the questions over and over and over again if we can put the newsletter in their hand. But I think that will be a great way to communicate and start the dialogue. I just don't remember off the top of my head, is there an open text space on the survey that would be the appropriate place to put feedback about what they think about Walgreens? I'd be surprised. So we might need to give them a separate avenue to share thoughts on that. But the first step is certainly to tell us what their needs are by doing the survey.
Right, but I don't think if we
Email Mark.
Yeah, the Walgreens thing though is so complicated because they're talking, you know, it's the rental possible. You know, we don't even know if they're going to respond to the RFP. You know, if somebody else is. And just given the discussion we had at the beginning here, that showed it's complicated because here's the people who are, you know, more knowledgeable than the typical citizen and had, you know, all sorts of questions, you know, and, you know, good question. And so I don't think there's any concise communication other than just the basic facts and refer them to the public information that's available on the website about everything's happened at this meeting. You know, that's as much information as we have.
Right. No, I mean how they can communicate to us their concerns about it. People are going to have concerns.
I know, but I don't think there's a, you know.
In fact, it's just, I think John Sasso hit it on the head.
What?
Yeah, I think John Sasso hit it on the head. Well, if people have questions or comments, we'd love for them to share what are their thoughts? And to the extent it's specific to Walgreens, okay, but what would be much more helpful is, what do you think about this topic? What are the needs? What do we need to do?
Yeah.
Walgreens might or might not be an example, but we'd love to get the input. And we'd love to hear what they have to say. And we've got a survey already there, ready to go.
So we'll push the survey as designed. And beyond that, I guess they go to their town meeting members. I don't know.
So they can reach out to the select board. They can reach out to, I don't think there's a recalc email per se. They can reach out to the council. All those are possible, especially if they have thoughts that they want to share. They can also come to public comment at the select board whenever they want, or send a note. Those are all possibles.
Okay.
You hear the members here, I think, is there. Oh, so we get contact information here. Cool.
Yeah, and it's a form. Gets filled out.
Cool. Yeah, and that it generates an email out of the back is what happens.
Okay, great. Thanks.
But yeah, no, I think if people want to share comments, that's great. I think it'd be great to get their comments on the needs as part of their feedback, if we can.
Yeah, no,
Mark,
I agree, Mark. I like Nancy and others have said, I'm getting a lot of just people that I never even talked to catching me by the sleeve and wanting to give me their 2 cents worth on it.
And
they need an outlet,
and
I'm not a very good one for it.
When there's good information, it needs to get shared, not just public meetings, but broadcast.
Yeah,
You have to figure out how to do that.
I agree.
Mark, where's the RFP located? Is it public? Is it on the website?
It should be on the website. It's definitely public.
Under what department, or you know?
Dermot?
I let me tell you how I found it. I went out to Google and I typed in RFP, Reading, Mass, town government, and it took me to the RFP page. From the town website, I couldn't figure out how to locate the RFP. But Google will get you there.
Oh, just type in RFP.
Yeah, or RFP Reading MA.
If you just type in RFP here in the search of the website, it comes up here.
Cool.
It doesn't always, though. I typed that in and it didn't come up. So
Okay.
Anyway.
Okay.
Anyway.
Because that will be a question that people ask. What RFP? It's on the website. So.
I think it may be 23-03, and it closes on September 19th at 1 p.m. If I'm reading it right. RFP for proposals to purchase real property for municipal use.
Mm-hmm.
And when will the submissions to the RFP be made public? What's the kind of timeline there, or Mark?
I think pretty quickly after it closes, then it's a public RFP. It's public information.
It's also under the procurement page on the town website. So if you go to the procurement department and scroll to the bottom, it says current bids and proposals. So that's another way to find it.
All right, do we need it? What else? Because actually we've talked about some of the preparations for the booth, the information that's going to be there. I know, Mark, you had sent us copies of people that were willing to volunteer. Students, I gather?
Yeah, so I was just chatting with Jenna. We need to see if we can coordinate tablets. A few, I think there are a few. In fact, I just sent Jenna a note beforehand to see if we can get that going. So we have volunteers. It would be great to get them to the booth. They're going to get service hours. I think they're high school students. They'll get service hours, which is kind of, we advertised it through the superintendent. So I would like to carry through on that. And if we could have a few tablets there that they could actually take people through the survey while they're at the fair, that would be cool. So we'd have that as an option. We'd have postcards that could be handed to them as an option. Is there a QR code that we have also? I'm just trying to remember. Is
It's
that
on
in-
it's on the postcard.
Yeah, okay, so from the
Right, but I
postcard.
think they
just take a
said
picture of the
having a larger one there, a QR code poster that people could.
I could blow up the postcard.
Okay, I just thought, no, I thought somebody had mentioned that last time.
Yeah, so I think it'd be great. Just it says, take our survey, and it just has the giant QR code, and
Yeah.
literally you just bring your camera to it. And
And Mark, just to be clear, I believe they're not tablets; they're Chromebooks. So
I keep saying that. Ron,
That's
I'm
right,
sorry.
Chromebooks. That's what Amy had
I
said.
keep doing that. Sorry. Chromebooks.
John Parsons.
I got the impression there's going to be two booths, one for Council on Aging and one from Recount next to each other. Is that correct or incorrect?
So my proposal in an email, I emailed the chairs of the committees and also the town divisions, because we only purchased 2 booths for the Fall Street Fair. So we were hoping that one would be Veterans and Elder and Human Services, because Chris, our new senior coordinator, will be going, as well as me and Will, our new VSO. So we'll kind of alternate at that booth. And then the other booth will be shared by Council on Aging and Recal. So I was going to make signs for those 2 boards and signs for those 2 divisions.
And are they
Side by
next,
side
are they
on
next to each other?
front of CVS. Yep, I requested them side by side in front of the CVS, because that's where it was indicated that maybe we could pull the best Wi-Fi. So if we do the tablets or the Chromebooks, we're hoping that we can pull the Wi-Fi from a restaurant or the town hall or something being nearby.
Okay,
Do
Nora?
we have to say we're having a meeting there because a bunch of people from Recalc are going to show up?
Don't talk about agenda items. You're entitled to be a private citizen.
Okay.
Nora?
The QR code. So if you put your phone up to it, then you have to take the survey on your phone. Is that correct?
Yes.
And
Yes.
is that feasible to take a survey on a phone?
Oh,
I think
For
it's
some,
recommended to do
not
that.
for me, but yes, it would be.
Yeah, I think
Not for you.
They can use a tablet too. So
Yeah. But Nora, I think that the way they're set up now is it knows that some people will use a computer, some people will use a tablet or a Chromebook, and some people will use a phone, and it kind of adjusts its size based on that.
Oh, okay.
But
So something
to
said-
John
And we'll
O'Neill's point, it's going to be small.
If we did the test one, that we can't do this again, right? Or am I misremembering? Anybody else recall that? What we had said?
Yeah, what prevents people from doing it multiple times?
How does it know?
I think it's one per
I
device.
don't think there's any constraint on that. I think when we did those of us that took it previously, I
Yes.
believe that data is already in the system. So
That's what I thought.
Oh,
So
okay.
there wouldn't be any point of doing it.
yeah, I mean, we can confirm that with UMass, but I'm pretty sure that when we did our surveys already, that data has been input.
That's what I thought
Um,
they had said.
Completely off topic, but we did also talk about getting interim results from UMass over.
Yes.
So I don't know if that action ever went anywhere, but
I think Gene was going to work on that with the UMass. Jenna, maybe that's something you're working on, or
I can send them out a note to give us an update on the most current survey data. By what date are you guys thinking? Give it like a week or
a
something?
week.
I think they were talking about weekly. Yeah, something.
Okay.
Each week would be great.
Yes.
John Parsons, coming back to yours if I could. Sorry, I didn't mean to just interrupt, but do we have a schedule so that we know there'll be people that would be willing to come to the booth?
I've told Council on Aging I can be there for 12 to 2 and 3 to 5. So I'll be around for a lot of the time. I just have to give my church an hour at another booth. That's all. I don't know what else. I don't know what else Maryland might have for people.
Yeah, I wasn't organizing it. Amy was. Amy
Amy
out.
has a schedule supposedly, yeah.
Yeah, I told I could do 12 to 2, but I know others were volunteering, but Amy took charge of that, so I don't know, and she hasn't shared the result yet, so.
I'll probably see Amy tomorrow. I'll be down at the Pleasant Street Center, so I'll ask her what's going on.
Okay.
You know,
Thank you.
unless she's tied up in a meeting or something.
And I said I could be there for the duration.
Is there anything else we need to know? I mean, so Amy's going to has a schedule, and since we haven't heard, I'm assuming that all the hours are covered. And you sent the student information to Amy as well, I believe, Mark. Is that correct?
Amy, Jenna, and you with the 3 people.
Yes, I know I received it.
And I think there were 3 students, if I'm
That's what I recall, that you had sent 3. Okay.
Yeah. And they're kind of waiting for feedback. Jen and I were just kind of chatting about this offline too. But yeah, it'd be great to coordinate these folks. Great if we can do it with the Chromebooks, and worst case, handing out material. But the Chromebooks would be awesome if we can.
Anything else we need to know for that before we move to set up our next meeting?
Do we want to have any paper copies?
I thought we said we were going to have paper copies, but once again, I
No,
don't.
we were having newsletters.
Right. No. But
I mean, at the fair.
Right. At the previous discussion, I thought we were going to have some. Is anybody else, once again?
If we're going to have paper to hand out, just a simple thing to remember is bring plenty of paperweights, because you can spend half your day chasing all your literature.
Good point. Good point. Very
Sounds like you've had experience, John.
That's why you're so trim. Okay. So with that,
Yeah, I was going to say it would be, there'll be some folks for whom filling it out online is not a possibility, and we want to make sure they have the opportunity to do paper.
Mm-hmm.
That said, the more that are done online, the more we can.
That's true. We don't. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
we'll encourage the online. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So I think we're ready to set up our next meeting. Is there a benefit to having it after the RFP is due, or?
So there's a meeting with the architect on the 19th, Mark, right? The subgroup.
Yes.
So you want to have it after that?
I would think, well, and that's the day for the RFP, so
Yeah.
that's another. So it would seem like that would be the best thing to do. So the 19th is did you say Monday, Mark?
It is a Monday. The select board's meeting the next day, the 20th. So I'm sure there'll be a discussion.
Okay, so we want to do the 21st?
21st, there's a financial forum.
Okay.
That is going to involve select board, school committee, finance committee, and we're trying to encourage other people. It's actually a discussion of municipal finance and how communities think about financing big projects as well as managing their budgets. So if anybody's interested, that's my commercial for it.
How about Thursday that week? Because I'm just mindful once again that the timeline, depending on how the RFP, it may be that we'll have all the time in the world, but we may have to weigh in sooner. So how about that Thursday? Is that?
I'm not available Thursdays at all.
Okay.
What about the following week, the 28th? Is that too late? Wednesday?
It would be good for me.
No, I mean, we want to have people there, so especially for all this meeting in particular are probably going to be a little more important than others. So can everybody make the 28th? Anybody can't, will they raise their hand? Let's put it that way. Okay, I see no hands up, and I saw a thumbs up before when people were saying they could make it. Okay, so our next meeting will be the 28th. And if there's any other business before the group, or entertain a motion to adjourn? Seeing no hands up.
Hang on.
Oh.
I just looked at my calendar. I thought it was the 26th is a Monday. Are we talking about 28th, the Wednesday?
Yes.
Yes.
Are we talking September?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yes. Good.
2022.
September 28th. It's a Wednesday.
Yes.
Just looking
Yes.
at Mondays.
Okay. All right. Anything else before I entertain a motion to adjourn? Seeing none. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay. Second. All right. There's no discussion. Roll call. Nora.
Present.
Okay. Mark.
Yes.
John Sasso.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Okay. John Parsons.
Yes.
Ron.
Yes.
John O'Neill. Yes. Motion is adjourned. Thank you as always.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.